Welcome to the More Than Corporate podcast, where we discuss finding fulfillment, defining success, and living your best life. There's no roadmap to success, no one-size-fits-all answer to fulfillment. I believe it requires us all to be vulnerable and authentic about what we want to accomplish and have the courage to step out of our comfort zone to chase our dreams. Keep listening to hear stories from inspiring people who make it their mission to live their best life every day. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the More Than Corporate podcast. I am so excited to dig into this topic today. The idea of I don't know. I say I don't know so many freaking times throughout a day. And what I really want to dig into is this idea that we say I don't know, and then how many weeks goes by before we realize that maybe we do know what we're doing, or maybe we know where to start, or maybe we should just start taking action. Like, how long is that period for you that you're willing to be paralyzed by I don't know? Because chances are that between the time that you said the words I don't know to the time that you finally decided to take some action, not a lot changed. You either knew the entire time or you didn't know the entire time. So my question for you in this podcast today is, how long are you going to let yourself be paralyzed by the fear of being wrong? Really quickly, before we dig into this topic, this podcast is sponsored by Success Development Solutions. If you or someone you know has ever said the words, I'll be happy when, I just need to keep losing weight, working hard, building my career, whatever fits into this topic, then I'll be happy. If you've ever felt like you've done everything that you're supposed to do and something's missing, even though everybody around you is telling you how successful you are, the Design Your Life Mastermind is for you. The most powerful question that anybody ever asked me is, what does success mean to you? And as I've explored this topic on my podcast and with my guests, it's become clear that we don't ask and answer this question enough for ourselves. The Design Your Life Mastermind is designed to help you get clear on what success means to you, what a well-rounded life looks like, and what your best life feels like, so that you can build a business that fits around the life that you want to have, and surround yourself with people who give you the courage to step out of your comfort zone to live that vision that you've created. If this sounds like something that you or someone that you know needs, please head over to designyourlife.morethancorporate.com and schedule a call to see if we're a good fit to work together. Always a reminder, I do stream these live to my Facebook community, the More Than Corporate community, that is going to be changing names soon. I'm going to be announcing that tomorrow, which is actually going to be Wednesday. So by the time this comes out on YouTube and the podcast, the name will have already changed. I will announce that to you guys later. I'm so excited for where this direction is going. What's going on, Corinne? If you want to be able to be a little bit more involved, to ask questions, to give your input on this topic for these solo Fridays, then go ahead and jump into the More Than Corporate community so that you can watch these live and we can interact just a little bit. So this idea of I don't know, how many times have you decided that you want to go out and do something? Whatever it is, I want to start a YouTube channel. I want to start a podcast. I want to start a coaching business. I want to learn to knit. Like I want to learn to ski, whatever this is. How many times have you said, but I don't know how to do that? And if you're anything like I used to be, and sometimes, let's be clear, still am, I don't know how to do that turns into, I don't know where to find the information for that. It turns into, how exactly am I going to do this when I have no idea what I'm doing? So let's look at what you're really afraid of. Because how many times are you wrong throughout the day? Think about that for just a minute. How many times do you say something that's not 100% right? And you go on your day, you're home alone, and you think something, and then you realize that that was wrong, and you go on with your day and everything's good. The fear comes in when that interaction now heads into the public. So my question for you to really think about as you dig into this topic of I don't know is, are you really afraid of not knowing? Or are you afraid of what people are going to think about you if you don't know? Are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of being wrong? Are you afraid of saying something and having that not be the right answer? Or are you afraid of what people are going to think about you if you are not in their eyes perfect? It's a really interesting question because it really makes you think about what's holding you back. For so long, when it came to putting this podcast on YouTube, I kept saying all the excuses. I talked about this last week. My lighting's not right. I don't have the stuff behind me that I want to have. I use filler words too much. I don't script out my podcast. So on audio, it's a little bit easier to edit out all the mistakes. And on video, it's just raw. And that's terrifying. But it's not terrifying because anything changes on my end. It's terrifying because the perception of what I put out is different. For so long, when it would come to getting this out on podcast or out on YouTube, I would come up with all the excuses and I would tell myself, oh my gosh, I can't do this right now. I'm too busy, right? My response to I don't know used to be I'm too busy. Can anybody else relate to that? Can you guys relate to the fact that I'm too busy to figure this out, right? I don't know what I'm supposed to do and I don't know where to find the answer. So I'm just not going to do anything because I'm too busy. I don't know if I'm the only one that goes through that feedback loop from hell, but that's so much of what goes on in my head sometimes. So when we're looking at how to get out of that, you hear me talk about so many times that we create, our energy goes where our focus flows, right? So when you say that you don't know, are you creating the reality that you don't know? Do you know somebody who does know, you know somebody who could give you some input, you know somebody who could be that mirror for you, and you could easily reach out to them and you could easily help have them bounce ideas off of you and be able to figure out where your first steps are. But that would require you putting yourself out there. And when you don't know, you don't want to put yourself out there. This I don't know, which leads to analysis paralysis, which leads to 6 months of being in the same position and waiting to start something, waiting to do something and not knowing where to start. It leads to buying courses and not taking any action because you just don't know. The information's right in front of you, but what if you don't do it right? What if I don't implement that right? And what if that only works for them? What if it doesn't work for me? The reality is all of these questions are really valid and they have a real impact on our emotions and on the way that we react to things. And there's no other way to move past them but to be imperfect. There's no other way to move past them than to embrace the imperfect action that I talked about last week. There's no other way past them than to be willing to fail in public, to be willing to put yourself out there and then adjust and then learn and then put yourself out there again. And I'm not even going to bullshit you by telling you that it's comfortable because it freaking sucks. Anybody who has gotten good at something knows that it sucks. I read a quote in Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and I put this out as a message on Facebook, like a graphic on Facebook and Instagram yesterday, that everything was difficult before it was easy. No matter what you do now that seems easy to you, no matter what you know the answers to now, it seemed difficult at one point in time. The difference is that something happened to cause you to decide to act. So, how do we take that end game where eventually we decide to act and shorten that time span so that we can limit the amount of time that we spend paralyzed? And the answer, I know this is so frustrating to hear. It was for me for sure. The answer is you just act. So here's what I've started to do on my daily calendars that I do is I decide what are the 3 actions that are non-negotiable for me today. What are the 3 actions that absolutely have to get done? They don't have to get done well. They have to get done as well as I am capable of performing them with the knowledge and resources that I have right now. What we find so many times is that once we start acting, we realize that we know so much more than we think we do. All of a sudden, the answers just start coming to us. The actions start coming to us. We start saying, okay, I'm going to make this one step today. And then all of a sudden, you've made 6, 7, 8, 9 steps. And that's 9 steps that you wouldn't have made if you were too busy because you didn't know. So what I really want you to do is think about in your days and in your life where you say the words, I don't know. Think about what situations you're in when that happens and what the true fear is. The problem is never the problem. So the problem is never that you don't know. The problem is that you're afraid of failing while you figure it out. Because we all have amazing people around us that can help us find those answers in one way or another, or they know somebody who can help us find the answers. But that requires admitting that we don't know. I would really encourage you to think about when you get that I don't know feeling, what is your response? Do you shut down? Do you move into something else? Are you too busy to do anything, but then you end up 7 episodes into Gilmore Girls? Not that I've ever done that before. What is your response to I don't know? And then how can you change that? And I would really encourage you to pick 1, 2, 3, whatever your number is of non-negotiable actions in an area that you want to move forward. Because if you've got 7 days in the week, even if you only work 5 out of those days, you've got 5 days now. And if you take 1 action per day towards that thing that you didn't know, you make some major progress. If you take 2 or 3 actions, or if you take 1 action in 3 areas, then you start to make some serious progress. The reality is, you've heard me say these words over and over again. We have the ability to define our best life. We get to design what our life looks like. We get to create our surroundings. The world as it exists the way that we project it to be, the way that we allow it to be. And because you get to define what your best life looks like, you get to design what your world looks like, then you owe it to yourself to actually step out of your comfort zone and live that vision. And if you sit in, I don't know, you're designing and defining this really amazing life for yourself. And then you're sitting back dreaming, wishing that it could be happening. So how do we take I don't know and dreaming and turn it into reality? The really uncomfortable answer is you act. If you guys have any questions on this, or if you want some additional information on how exactly I implement this, please feel free to reach out to me. You can find my contact information at morethancorporate.com, or you can access the More Than Corporate community on Facebook, and I would love to hear what you think of the episode. Thank you guys so much who are listening live in the More Than Corporate community. You guys mean so much to me, and I'm really excited to finally be putting this out for everybody on YouTube as well, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you soon. Again, always remember that you have the ability to define your best life, and you owe it to yourself to have the courage to live it. Have a fantastic day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the show. I hope that something that was said resonated with you or provided value to you in one way or another. I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on the show. You can reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram at Amber Fuhriman. Also, I've created a Facebook community for followers of the show to interact with me and other members of the community. You can find that on Facebook at More Than Corporate. So go ahead and join that group if you'd like to stay up to date on podcast happenings and meet some really cool people. Again, thanks so much for tuning in.